Eric. We have known each other for I would say like what 12 years now almost.
Maybe closer to 15.
Yeah, time flies, right?
It does.
Yes, I have referred so many clients to you. We've had so many closings, and we closed every time. And your team is fantastic. So I just wanted you to talk to the audience about what your services are. What you could do on seller side, buyer side. I know you've represented both in my experience with you. I know you also represent clients who may have a mortgage delay. I know that we worked on that together as well, meaning a property that they may be behind on. We're not seeing a lot of that now, but I know we did in the times that we did. So yeah, go ahead. Why don't you tell us a little bit about all the stuff that you do?
Great. Well, thank you for having me. Um, as Amber said, my name is Eric Firestone. I am a real estate attorney. I've been practicing for now 30 years. My firm is a dedicated real estate firm, which means we only do real estate related transactions. We represent purchasers and sellers in residential and commercial transactions. We also represent lenders in residential transactions. We also do commercial and residential leases. So we are a dedicated real estate firm. I have three paralegals and myself. So we're well suited to take care of everyone's real estate needs.
Yeah, and I love that I can text you when there's somewhere we're stuck on a transaction, and very quickly either you or Raven will jump in. Raven is your paralegal, and get things moving. It's an asset in today's time, especially when we have picky buyers, expectant sellers, and people who are just waiting for things to go well. Um, some of the questions I thought might be useful from what I know you do to the audience is um, in your experience, when a purchaser is buying a property that may be abandoned for some time, whether that's something they're buying at auction.com, a lot of people are asking about that because they think there's a crash coming that you and I are not seeing, but people are anticipating that they'll get better deals now. If they're purchasing something that's been vacant, an estate sale that the kids are not living in anymore either, and it's empty, what would you advise them to prepare for?
Well, when you're buying a distressed property, especially if you're doing something like auction.com and you're seeing that a property is about to go go up for sale, people need to know, first of all, that the large majority of properties that actually are, quote, going up for sale won't end up making it to the sale because the owners will probably file bankruptcy
Mm-hmm.
at the last second. So they will stop it, they'll file an order to show cause, something to stop the foreclosure from going forward. So if you're a purchaser thinking that you've identified a property, you like it, you want to go forward, there's a good chance that that property may not actually go up for sale on that given day. So that's
Mm-hmm.
one thing that you need to know. Okay. In terms of a purchaser buying a property like that, it's different from buying a regular property that's not in a distressed state, that where you have an owner that's selling, or an estate where there's no foreclosure going on, where you have the normal protections under the contract of sale. When you are buying a distressed property and you have a seller that's in foreclosure, and close to foreclosure, there are certain things you need to do as a purchaser to protect yourself before you sign the contract.
Mm-hmm.
The main thing that you have to do is you have to do your due diligence. You're going to have to look into the property, see, are there any open permits, are there any violations, anything that the that's not going to go towards title. So if they have multiple judgments and they're in foreclosure, those things will be taken care of within the foreclosure. But things like violations, open permits, sidewalk liens, those things won't be taken care of. And in a normal transaction, a purchaser can go into contract knowing that the seller is going to take care of those things because that's what's required. But in a
Really, right? Like you 100%. I'm sorry, I'm not to interrupt you, but that's like real life lesson for purchasers who think one that I made a bid on auction.com, I'm definitely going to close it, and then they find out that the property has so many violations that it's the price doesn't make sense at what they bid it for because the title is so messy and no one's cleaning it up but themselves, right?
Yeah.
And the buyers can go to title companies, right? And be able to pull a preliminary title and have them review any new recordings of any kind of violations. It's not hard to do. Where can they go if they wanted to do that? And if you were representing them, how quickly do you think you could turn around and let them know what's going on with the title of the property?
Well, what I would do is I would advise them to, or, like you said, order a title report, a preliminary title report, including all departmental searches for violations and open permits and things like that. It probably will cost them around $350. It's worth it, for the potential problems that will come down the road. And it's an investment, but it's a worthwhile investment. And what
Mm,
I would do is have one of the title companies that I work with run the title on a rush. Probably can get it in within, hopefully 2 or 3 days, because I know
right.
that with these things, time is of the essence. There's multiple bidders on properties, and you want to make sure that you're at the front of the line. So the sooner you commit to running that title and seeing what's going on, the sooner you can make an informed decision.
Yeah, and that goes also for properties um, that have been abandoned or are maybe estate sales, maybe in the middle of probate. What would you tell a buyer who was about to buy a property that was vacant for some time, or was in probate? Would you add anything more to it besides what we just discussed?
Well, if it's vacant and in probate, we're not dealing with a foreclosure situation.
Yeah.
That's a little different. Then you're not as worried about things like violations of open permits because the estate would still have to take care of it. But with respect to a vacant house, then you want to make sure absolutely that you have a home inspection done, and you have an engineer go in there and check the property out because it's been vacant for a while. Um, Houses that are vacant and sitting there tend to deteriorate faster than houses that are occupied. So you want to make sure that the house is at least in the type of condition that you're expecting it to be. And you may not have high expectations, and that's fine,
Right.
but you have to make sure that it is at least in the condition that you expect it to be.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think not all estate sales have a vacant property. It's not a rule of thumb. Sometimes there is a family member living there, but the upkeep is generally, I would say, not the same as it would be as the original owners being there who took the mortgage out, who made the mortgage payments, right? Because they had a different kind of commitment to the property as well. Um, in the situation, let's flip the situation with a seller that has an estate sale they're trying to put on the market. How long do you think Queens? I know you're located in Queens and in the city. You work more in the city. How long is the probate filing taking right now in the city?
I'm seeing 4 to 6 months right now,
Four to
and
six months.
that's
That's
what I'm
very
seeing.
good. It used
Yeah,
to
I'm seeing
be
four.
longer.
It seems to be longer. I'm seeing about 4 to 6 months. I have an estate attorney that I work with for my clients who, if they don't have an attorney to do probate or administration proceeding, they handle it for the client. And I'm seeing about 6 months right now. Yeah, it's gotten better. It used to be worse. Queens is still worse than most. Queens and Brooklyn is still worse than most of the other boroughs, but
Mm.
uh, but it's certainly better than it was, in the days coming out of COVID. That's for sure.
And in those 6 months, I tell my clients when I meet someone who is in probate, depending on which state, which county they're in, I would speak to their attorney and find out how long the probate will take so we can plan the marketing part of it. You can market a property, I know that's in probate as long as it's transferred with clean title and the person who is, I mean, what do you say about that? Do you think we should wait until the probate's properly filed, or if everything is in order and there's no issues and no conflict, do you think it's a good idea to go ahead and market it?
I think it's a good idea to market it, and go forward. I don't think it's a good idea to sign a contract until, at the very least, the paperwork's been filed with the surrogates court, either for a probate or administration proceeding. You can, a proposed executor or administrator of an estate can enter into a contract of sale, to sell. However, it cannot close until the probate is done and letters testamentary or letters of administration are issued.
Mm-hmm. In a situation that there is a few different siblings and they all have a different idea of what the property is worth, one of the things I do is I kind of come and mediate. I got myself certified as a mediator just because I was running into situations where people weren't agreeing on pricing or on strategy of marketing, or Um, do you think that in a conflict situation, we should hold back until some kind of an agreement is written between all the parties before putting it on the market? Because once a property these days, with the digital world we're in, once a property is on the market, to take it off, you could see that data, and then it goes back on, you could see that data, and the history of the property becomes very clear for buyers. So as real estate professionals, we need to be very responsible about when we put a property on the market, it's actually ready to go at that price, and everybody on the estate is agreeing on that price.
Right. I would not put a property on the market if you have siblings that are arguing over price or terms. That is a recipe for disaster, because if they're fighting going in and not coming to an agreement, they'll be fighting straight through to the closing. And so the best thing to do is to have everybody on the same page, even if it's reluctantly, as long as they're on the same page and know this is what we're selling it for, these are the terms, and as long as they're clear on that, then you can move forward. And not everybody may be 100% happy, but at least everybody will have the same level of expectation.
Yeah, a really good point. Not everybody's happy. I think when people come to disagreement or have an idea about values that are different, someone's going to be not happy about their point of
Right.
view not being correct.
Right.
Um, uh, Also, I've come across situations a lot where all of that is resolved, but when we go to close on the property, somebody has a problem because now they're getting the net proceed. They know what they're getting, and they start to find out the water bill wasn't paid and who didn't pay it, who was supposed to pay it. And that brings up issues as well. I find estate sales are very unique in that, because you kind of have to keep everyone satisfied. Even can you shed some light on the executor? If there's an executor to the estate, does that mean none of the siblings really have a say in anything, and the executor goes ahead with the decision making, or do you think that it doesn't matter?
Well, technically, the executor of the estate or the administrator of the estate does make the decisions, and is the one that can make a decision um, once they've been named executor and letters have been issued, or administrator. The issue becomes that where if you have siblings or beneficiaries that aren't happy with what the executor or administrator is doing,
Hmm.
that they could bring some type of action against the executor or the administrator for breach of fiduciary duty. And that's an extreme circumstance. Um, Usually, by the
Yeah.
time we get to a point where someone's named and letters are issued, at that point, then the beneficiaries have already signed off on it. And so it would be difficult for them to contest, but they could create problems. I mean, from a practical standpoint, you could have a beneficiary that enters the property and refuses to leave. You could have someone that creates trouble at closing and scares off the buyers. There's a lot of issues there. So while the executor or the administrator does have the legal authority to act in the interest of the estate and close on a property, and they do have a fiduciary duty to the estate just to make sure that everything is okay and that they're doing things the right way and above board. If you have a rogue beneficiary that's causing trouble, legally they may not be able to do much, but as a practical matter, they can derail a transaction. So it's important to have everybody on the same page as much as
Yeah,
possible.
right. In a high conflict situation, it's important to have everybody on the same page, even if the admin and the executors have been assigned by the parents. That's usually done at the will, right? When the parents assign who the executor will be, or is that done by some other math?
Well, with a will, the executor is named in the will, or executors. So you could have co-executors as well. It doesn't have to be one.
Hmm.
When it comes to someone dying with passing without a will, then it's an administration proceeding, and then someone's named as administrator, and then someone has to step up and say, "I'm going to be the administrator. We're going to be the co-administrators," and then
Hmm.
that person is appointed by the court with the permission, with the consent of the other beneficiaries or potential administrators of the estate.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Anything else you would like to tell somebody who's about to? We could do one thing about a buyer that you've come across that turned a potentially great transaction for them into a nightmare. I know I have some stories of all kinds. And same thing for a seller. If you have advice on something that happened and you would say, hey, in hindsight, I wish they had done this or that.
Right. So with a purchaser, I would say two things: one for an estate and one for foreclosure.
Mm,
Both is just managing expectations of time. On a normal transaction, 60 to 90 days, you're going to get a mortgage, you're going to lock your rate, hopefully let it float for a little while, lock it for 60 days, and close within that 60 to 90-day period without having any issues regarding rate lock extensions. When
mm,
it comes to an estate or even a short sale situation, then it can take longer. For instance, if it's taking 6 months, let's say the estate, they filed their papers, but the court's being taking their time.
mm,
I had a situation where I had a seller. This is a seller situation, but on the buyer side, they were very upset because um, they filed their probate proceeding in Nassau County, actually, and we expected to close by the end of the year. And then what happened was the surrogate court judge unexpectedly either resigned or was removed and replaced, and the new temporary judge didn't want to do anything that was create problems because you had beneficiaries that were contesting. And instead of closing at the end of the year, we ended up closing in May. And the
wow.
the buyer was very
Big
upset,
difference.
but yeah, very big difference. And the buyer hung in there, and my client, the estate, ended up having to pay their rate lock extension fees in order to keep them in the deal.
Yeah.
So for a buyer, you have to understand that when you're getting a mortgage, you're getting a loan commitment, you have a rate that's going to expire at a certain point. You have documents that are going to expire, and time is less of your ally in that situation than it would be in a normal transaction. So that's something for a buyer that I would be very
That I,
careful
I
about.
think that's really well said, like managing expectations, period. Even on a regular transaction, I think when you're purchasing a property as a purchaser, first time buyer especially, they think it's going to be like a walk in the park until they get to the lake and the
Yeah,
home's going to be, they're going to get the keys. And it's not quite that way, right? The surprise of what the payments will be, the unknowns that come at them. And I know as agents, we can mitigate a lot of that. But what we can't do is manage the emotions that come with that part of it. I think a lot of it can be managed, and sometimes people go into it knowing that's going to happen, and it's great. But that's not always true for both partners
that's true. Very
or
true.
all members or the kids.
That's right.
you know
Absolutely. Absolutely.
the kids who are so excited about the house and they find out they're not getting the bedroom they thought they were,
That's right.
or anything. And you and I both have seen buyers come to a closing table just being so overwhelmed and tired, and yet they want the property, they know they made the right decision, and yet it took a lot to get there. So managing
Yeah.
expectations is the best way I can put it for
Yes.
purchases, no matter what they're buying.
Right.
um, and for today's sellers, I think the new issue at hand is that they have pickier buyers. You know, I think the time's a little bit changing. Buyers are pickier. They want a little bit of a deal, even if it's not a smoking deal. In certain zip codes, I'm seeing people still overbidding, and in certain zip codes, it's the other way around. They're kind of taking their time or trying to get out of it after they made an offer. So, what advice would you give a seller in today's market, just in general?
Just in general, well, I would say sellers are it always lags, right? So if it was once a seller's market and everything's going great, and during post COVID, properties were flying off the market 20% above asking, and so then the market shifts. Interest rates go up, inventories down, but interest rates go up. Buyers are more picky. Buyers are more reticent to go forward, and sellers still have the memory of things flying off the market at 20% over. And for them, it seems like it was yesterday, but it was a couple of years ago. And so for
So true.
sellers, the important thing is to say, well, they hear that there's low inventory on the market, and they hear that properties are flying off the market in Nassau and Suffolk, and they're in Queens. And so they're thinking to themselves, that's only a few miles away. I want to put my property on for as much as I could possibly get without really understanding the market. And
You touched upon something that is my biggest challenge in right now is I want to educate my clients when I sit down along the same lines, and they don't want to know. They want to hear from agents that are like, "Oh, I'll get you this much," and You're like, well, they'll get me this much, and then the house sits there on the market for a long time, and there's price reductions. And I can't say more about that. Like, just really get engaged in data, and don't hire an agent that's not showing it to you, because they're probably not looking at it themselves, which means they're just getting documents signed. Their only focus is to sign this document and lock you in for a year, which is a strategy for agents, right? And then the price reductions come. But engage in the data. It's really, you've taken years to pay your mortgage. I worked hard to make those payments. This is an asset. Yes, it's an emotional attachment people have to their home, but it's also an asset. It's a huge investment. So look at the data, you know.
Yes, and the fact is that like you said, it's an emotional thing. People think that their property is worth more than what the market states, and there are realtors out there that will say and do anything to
Mm-hmm.
get the listing. So they'll tell the seller what they want to
Yep.
hear, and then they'll worry about it later when it comes to when the market.
I have a lot of buyers at that price. That's the line that they hear, and it's like you don't know if you have a buyer unless they walk through the property. You
Right.
just don't, and so really look at data, and look at data with detail, like how many days on the market. Is something similar to your home is on the market for a certain price. Did it sell immediately? How many days did it stay on the market? And why? Was it because there was a tenant in it? Then we throw that out as the comparable, right? But so all of that, and I think that's something I love engaging in, and I don't find that everybody wants to. But the ones who do, we sell it fast and quick, and and the
Yeah.
ones that don't, we keep convincing them and working with them, and it always works out. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. Both very good points, and I think people will get value from watching this. It's going to go out to all my database and on social media. So thank you for your time, Eric.
It's my pleasure.
We might do this again in down the line, end of the year or something. If there's a new topic, we think it's entering the market.
Well, the market's always changing, so things may, between now and the end of the year, things we just said today may shift slightly depending on what's going on out there.
100%, 100%. Yeah, exactly. And if you, yeah, so I'm just gonna end the recording.